Today we're joined by Kenneth Clay of Corinthian Capital Group, Bob Nolan of Halyard Capital, and Steve Milner of Gen 2 Fund Services. Gentlemen, welcome to PrivCap today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We're talking about things that you wish you'd known before you launched a private equity firm. We have two private equity firm founders here in the form of Kenneth and Bob, and of course, Steve, you have seen more than 100 and helped more than 100 private equity firms launch, and so we're very interested in your perspective as well. Why don't we start with an observation that all of you have made, which is that the ability to successfully do private equity deals does not necessarily mean you have the ability to successfully build a private equity firm, or at least there are different skills involved. Let's start with you, Kenneth. Talk about the process of forming your own firm and coming to the conclusion that actually there's a different set of skills needed to actually build a firm.
Sure. Most people who have started a firm have experience in the industry, obviously, and they mostly come from the deal side. I don't think there are a lot of folks in the back office that really want to start their own firm to optimize that. So you've got deal guys that have had a successful track record. They're all, I think, intelligent, successful individuals, and so they decide to strike out on their own. And what they probably underappreciate is that there is a whole infrastructure that has to be created, and you really have to manage a business, which is different than being a successful investor. And so there are lots and lots of pieces that go into that.
Do you agree, Bob? Are there different muscles that need to be flexed in building a sustainable private equity firm as opposed to doing deals?
I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, if you look at the history, as Kenneth just touched on, we all tend to have deal creating, deal doing strengths that were formed in the private equity field, but even before that in investment banking. There's a long history in financial services of people being pushed from a transactional role to a managerial role and it being ill-fitting. So there's no mistaking the fact that people, as always, are the most essential ingredient in terms of setting up your own fund. I think what was a little bit different in our case is I'm a spun-out group from an institution. So the difference was there was an organization in place. It just was easily subsidized, and then suddenly you're thrust into a position where you need to create it again on your own. As kind of touched on, it's not a skill set that you're born with. It's one that, quite honestly, is found over time.
Mm-hmm. And Steve, as someone who has helped many firms get launched, have you observed that many, I guess, deal guys and deal gals tend to assume that they have managerial skills that they may need to work on a bit?
Well, as an advisor, we get a front row seat to how these funds are formed. And as both Kenneth and Bob said, oftentimes these firms come together. The nucleus are deal professionals. And so the deal professionals are the team that comes together first. And then amongst them, they figure out what they need. And so do we need a CFO? Do we need general counsel? What is the size of the firm? There are a lot of things that go into this. And what's also occurred more recently is you've got the regulatory burden, which has just added a new weight to how you think about configuring your firm.
Bob, your firm spun out of Bank of Montreal, correct?
Correct.
Was there a different mix of professionals needed after you got outside of the broader infrastructure of the bank?
I don't think there's any question about it. We obviously were subsidized in some form by the organization itself, and we were able to draw on all the elements that were embedded in that institution. But look, it's a mixture of insourcing and outsourcing those services. So be they accounting, be they compliance, be they legal, there are a number of ways in which to address those issues. So for us, it was a matter of looking at both the outside world and the way they provision, let alone hiring inside people for that purpose. I would say the skills are administrative, they're financial, they're obviously deal doing, and lastly, they're managerial. And that takes a mixture of people and a mixture of skill sets. And as I said, it may well take a mixture of insourced capabilities and outsourced capabilities.
Quick follow-up question for both of you, and that is, in managing your own firm, did you find yourself performing tasks or overseeing certain functions that you hadn't anticipated before you spun out?
Well, I can say without question, I was not anticipating the SEC being such a close partner in my development of the fund. That happened after we had raised the capital and after we'd spun out. It had not been anticipated. So back to the point, we had to both go talk to a number of compliance people who could assist us in putting together the right procedures and processes and manuals. And then there was an insourced element in terms of naming and designating a chief compliance officer, as well as bringing in outside assistance and maintaining that outside assistance for annual reviews that had not been anticipated when we first raised the money. So I would say that was the one that surprised us.
Yeah, and I had a similar experience. In fact, I was traveling when the firm decided to elect or appoint a chief compliance officer, and I guess as the one that was absent, I drew the short straw. And so I hadn't really counted on that, and so I went through the whole process of becoming compliant with Dodd-Frank and all of the relevant things that go with that. I think in addition, there are things that you don't really focus on that are relevant. For instance, I was able to use some of the deal skills in connection with negotiating health insurance benefits as we were building out our space. There were certain sort of financial assurances that we gave the landlord, and some of those fell away in negotiating for early releases of deposits and escrows and the like. So there were lots and lots of things that you don't really anticipate because you just can't know everything. Some of those things were just net new activities, and others really drew on some of the deal skills because they were pertinent to what we were doing.
I think one of the things, David, that we see, which is interesting, is funds come to market and the LPs have become more sophisticated, as have their consultants. And so now when they come and express interest and they meet up with Kenneth and Bob, they've got a due diligence questionnaire, yay thick. And there are a whole bunch of questions that you start to realize you have gaps. And so, frankly, for us, we're getting more and more of these DDQs sent our way, and we can fill out the back office piece and cybersecurity and disaster recovery and business continuity on behalf of our clients. But the LPs are getting more sophisticated. They're also forcing the issue in terms of what are the gaps that you need to fill. Gen2 is a leading independent private equity administrator. We have over $65 billion of capital under administration, making us one of the largest independent non-bank administrators globally. We deliver a platform to our clients, a platform that consists of people, process, and technology. Think about us as the people who prepare your capital call letters, distribution notices. We prepare financial statements. We compute performance metrics, IRRs, multiples. And lastly, we track the preferred return, compute the waterfall, and the carried interest. Our objective is to enable our clients to deliver to their limited partners best-in-class reporting, while at the same time enabling their organization to really focus on their investment portfolio.